You make the parts for Saturn. I just take it over to Haley Buick GMC. Boom, bada, boom, bada, boom. They fix me up, and they beat everybody else's rate. Haley Buick GMC, 804-320-9054. Give them a call today, GM Barry Moore, 804-320-9054, 9831 Midlothian Turnpike in Richmond. Joining us now, Congressman Blake Farenthold, Republican, Texas, District 27. Congressman, great to have you with us.
Good to be with you, too.
Now, Congressman, yesterday, CIA Director John Brennan said that the attacks in Paris claimed by the extremist Islamic State were not a quote-unquote one-off event, and you've immediately proposed legislation to stop the influx of these 10,000 so-called Syrian refugees into the United States. Can you elaborate, sir, on your concern and your bill?
Well, I'm working with Brian Babin, another Texan, on this, and quite frankly, I'm not sure we're going to be able to do anything. It basically says quit bringing people in here until we can thoroughly vet them and make them safe. The fact of the matter is, though, even if we were to pass this out of the House and the Senate, President Obama is going to veto it. The only way we're going to be able to stop this, I'm afraid, is through either political pressure on the president, or hopefully we'll be able to do something legislatively by defunding those efforts.
Now, let's get to the defunding the efforts. My fear with trying to defund it is it turns into shutting the government down argument, which Republicans always lose. You just can't win that argument. It turns it over from whatever you're trying to do to shutting the government down. Is there a way to propose legislation, Congressman, that could defund the effort without so-called shutting down the government?
Well, the whole shutting down the government argument comes to the fact that the funding is the only leverage we have as Congress with the president. He's got to sign the continuing resolution, omnibus, or appropriations bills, however the government gets funded, or it shuts down. I don't understand how we lose it as Republicans. We fund everything in the government but letting people in who want to kill us. How do we lose that argument?
I don't know. It's insane, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
Why would we be paying to bring people in? Look, they've already proved that the overwhelming refugee crisis in Europe, there were just so many of them, that ISIS or whoever is behind this has embedded and smuggled terrorists in. Why wouldn't you think they wouldn't do that to us?
No, listen, it's the second easiest way for a terrorist to get here is to pose as a refugee. The easiest, of course, is to get to Mexico and walk across the Rio Grande.
Right. So walk us through the what your legislation, how it'll progress, and maybe it isn't a bad idea to send it to the president so that he's got to veto it, right? I mean, at least then you'd be able to take a stand.
The idea is let's put the refugee program on hold until we can find a way to vet folks. And, of course, the issue with Syria is there's no government to get the information from. Basically, the only vetting process in place for these folks is an interview they have with American officials. And if they can look the American official in the eye and lie to them, they're here.
Right.
And that's part of the problem. We had the FBI director testify in front of the Judiciary Committee that there really is no information on these folks. The Syrian government is in disarray. We can't get the information from the government. We actually have a more robust ability in Iraq, where we've been taking fingerprints off IED and we're getting information and help from the government. We're better off letting in Iraqis and Syrians because we have more information. That being said, you've got more than half the governors in this country saying, don't bring these folks into my state.
Congressman, let's get back to the president's defiance, if you will. Basically, Obama yesterday saying, look, I'm going to continue with my plan to pay to get 10,000 Syrian refugees into the United States. Very defiant with it, becoming aggravated at people even asking him the question. Obviously, there's a safety concern. I don't think this is a partisan issue, right? Nobody wants to get blown up by people. That's nonpartisan. Why, Congressman, has the president on this issue dug in his heels?
I think he has a very different worldview, and I think he's not hearing things he doesn't want to hear. Just hours before the Paris attack, he said that ISIS was contained. I don't think he's hearing what his advisors are telling him because it doesn't align with his worldview. That's the only explanation that makes any sense to me.
So, Congressman Farenthold, let's get to Obama's overall objective. I mean, why wouldn't he just say, well, you know what? We're going to slow things down. I'm going to be absolutely certain that our vetting process is there, and we're just going to wait. We're going to maybe take, 30 days and not do anything until we figure this out. What would be the downside?
That's not the way he governed. Ever since I've been in Congress in 2010, the message from President Obama has been, my way or the highway. I'm not going to listen to Congress. I'm not going to listen to the American people. I know better. And that's gotten us into quite a few messes. This situation could turn out to be fatal for the victims of an attack.
No question. Now, so our audience knows, again, those just joining us, we're with Congressman Blake Farenthold, Republican, 27th District of Texas. And Congressman Farenthold is a co-sponsor of H.R. 3314, the Resettlement Accountability National Security Act of 2015, which would halt the Department of Homeland Security's authority to admit refugees until Congress voted affirmatively to once again admit these refugees. And the bill has been referred to the Judiciary Committee. Now,
and I'm on that committee.
Okay. Now, have you talked to Chairman Bob Goodlatte from Virginia?
We have. Brian Babin has been visiting with Bob. We're looking at really trying to push this through. Under the new Ryan leadership, we're trying to get stuff that bubbles up from the rank-and-file members of Congress. This bill seems like a great common-sense approach to apply the new Ryan doctrine of taking members' bills, running them up through the committees, and bringing them to the House floor. I think this would be the perfect example to show how that new process works, and that's kind of the message we're pushing to both the Speaker and to Chairman Goodlatte.
Blake, have you had any pushback from leadership on this?
Not particularly, no. I think everybody pretty much agrees that it's the right thing to do. The issue is skepticism about whether President Obama signs it, which is why Congress is taking a two-pronged approach. This legislative solution and the appropriations folks are working on riders to whatever we do to fund the government here in the next month or so that will stop funding for this program.
All right, so I've got Chairman Bob Goodlatte on a week from today, Congressman. What specifically should I ask him about this bill?
I think you should ask him what the status of it is and see if we can get a commitment out of him for us to mark it up and pass it out of the committee.
All right, I'm jotting that down.
I'll fire you off an email to remind you, because any help you could give us would be greatly appreciated.
All right. Well, he's on a week from today, so we'll certainly ask him that. And if you could pop me an email on it so I get the wording accurate, that would be helpful. Now, let's get to the other piece of this. There's two things: your bill plus the funding issue. So technically, you could cut funding off, right?
Congress controls the purse strings. The issue, and you hit on it earlier, is we've got to spin this as the right thing to do and not get tagged as shutting down the government over refugees.
Right, because that's what they'll immediately do. They'll say, you want to shut down the government, people can't visit the White House, people can't get paid, federal workers are out on the street, they're starving. Right? I mean, I've heard this argument here, especially in Virginia, so many times I could repeat it verbatim. So if that ends up being what the media gets out there, you lose. It has to be look, we want to be sure our kids are not going to get blown up, right? I mean, that's really what this argument is.
That's the simple message, and unfortunately, the mainstream media does not normally pick up on that. It immediately becomes about a government shutdown. But there is no power of the purse if the Congress isn't willing to dig their heels in and say no over nothing. Because if you take it to the extreme, let's say we wanted to cut 25 cents from the Department of Homeland Security, and the other side said, no, we want to give them that quarter. You'll be shutting down the government if you don't do it. So, I mean, it's worthless. The power of the purse is worthless unless you're willing to go to the mat for it. Now, yeah, I think there are better ways to do this with the Republicans and Democrats working together. It is not a partisan issue protecting this country from terrorists, and it looks like it was refugees that came into France. At least one of them, the reports are, was involved in this massacre.
At least one. We don't know how many, but there's a school of thought out there that says the whole refugee crisis was, inspired by those backing ISIS to create a chaotic situation to be able to smuggle in terrorists. And we don't know how many have come into Europe. One, at least we know, was involved in this particular attack. There could be thousands scattered through the Western Europe. No one has any idea. That's what's scary about it. Now, just so
the other part of it is when you and I think refugee, I think women and children fleeing a war zone, not fighting age men.
Well, look, we've been saying this for some time. You know, you look at the photographs of these so-called refugees, and they're 19 to 27 strapping, healthy young men. If you look through history photographs of refugees, say in World War II, refugees fleeing Eastern Germany, or Russian refugees fleeing Stalingrad at the time, they were old men, they were women, and they were children. Why were there no young men? Because they were fighting for their country. That's why this thing is so absurd, why we would let these people in. Now, Congressman Farenthold, there are 23 governors as of Monday that said they're not going to allow refugees in their states.
I think we're up to 26 now.
26, okay. And only one Democrat, and that's New Hampshire Governor Maggie Hassan. Now, the feds are saying, nice try, but you have no jurisdiction. If we want to place refugees, Chris Christie, in New Jersey, we're going to put them in New Jersey. Have a good day. Who's right?
Well, here's the issue. The federal government, by the Constitution, is given the power to set the rules for immigration, and you can't, as a state, you can't set your own immigration rules. There is like an 1800 Supreme Court case that says that the states can say no if it's burdensome to the state, but I think it's going to be difficult to make that argument with the relatively small number of immigrants that there are. So you then go back to you go back to the Arizona case decided a few years ago that says the U.S. government does have some precedent there.
All right, so basically, the governor's saying they're not going to take them. I mean, at the end of the day, they can't make that decision.
It would be very difficult for them, I think, to do that.
All right, got a couple more minutes. I want to get to the other issue. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul yesterday saying that he was going to introduce legislation that looked at not the refugees, but the EB-5 visas, those coming in on work permits, stopping that for a while. What do you make of that?
Listen, the immigration debate is huge. We've got all sorts of issues that need to be dealt with, but this Syrian one needs to be top of mind because it is, I think, a dangerous situation because I do believe that it's one of the easiest ways for a terrorist to get into this country. Then we can start talking about the work visas But the real issue on immigration is, what's the point in having this fight until the border is secured? We can make all the immigration laws we want, and if the president's not going to enforce them, or if it's incredibly easy just to sneak across the border or get in on a tourist visa and not leave, we can rewrite the rules until the cows come home, and it's not going to make much of a difference.
Well, that about sums it up, right? If we don't secure the southern border, this whole thing doesn't really matter, because they'll find another way in if they're not here in the United States right now. Congressman Blake Farenthold, Republican, District 27 in Texas. We want to thank the congressman for joining us today. He's on the Judiciary Committee, and we're going to be following his move to stop these Syrian migrants from coming into the United States, at least until we figure everything out. Congressman, thanks for being with us, sir.
Anytime.